Hello and welcome to Ticker Climate. My name is Holly Stearns. It's great to have you tuning in every single week. Now on Ticker Climate, we tackle the climate crisis facing our planet and then we examine what actions governments and corporations need to be taking. Each week we speak with key people in this space. My co-host Scott Hamilton is a climate change and energy expert. Scott is an author, researcher and policy advisor with a mission to tackle the big issues and accelerate climate change action. Scott, great to see you as always.
Hello, Holly. Great to be here again.
Now, let's get right into it. This week, our guest is global expert and activist on climate change, renewable energy and nature, Svien Tveitdal. Now, Svien is a former UN director and now director of Klima 2020. Svien joins us live from Norway. Great to have your company, Svien. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Now, I wanted to start our conversation, Svien, if you could start by telling us a little bit about the work that you do at Klima 2020 and what you're working on.
Well, I established this company when I retired as a UN director. And the work is mainly climate communication. I'm quite active on Twitter. When I came back, I also then was hired as an environmental ambassador to the small city of Arendal, where I live. We have only 40,000 citizens. And maybe the most interesting thing I'm doing for the time being is to go around in Norway to talk to students in schools. Together with a writer, we have a story called Hope or Catastrophe, where we talk about climate change and nature loss. And I think I have been to 200 schools and met 30,000 students. So I like that a lot.
Remarkable.
Terrific. So great to have you here from all the way from Sweden. And the Nordic countries actually really often show great leadership in climate action and sustainability. I was wondering whether you could share with us a couple of areas that we're currently dealing with in this part of the world at the moment, is how to get more uptake of electric vehicles and also how to really stimulate the hydrogen economy made from wind and solar power and those sorts of things, and share some of your experience.
Well, I could start with an absolute success story, because now more than 50% of new cars in Norway that are sold are electric, fully electric, not hybrids. And the key word is subsidizing, actually, stimulation. We have free parking, no road toll, no VAT, growing network of charging stations, allowed to drive in taxi and bus lanes, etc. So this is, we are not more environmentalists than other countries. It's just to do it like this and it will happen everywhere. So that's a way to speed up the transition. But now we are starting to withdraw the benefits because now the market works and we can withdraw the benefits. You mentioned hydrogen. We are a country with huge possibilities there because we have more than 95% of our energy is renewable, mainly from hydro. So we can use this plus our technology and we definitively invest in hydrogen development. But I have to mention, when you talk about the Nordic countries, that we are also hypocrites. Because so far, the main parties in Norway are not willing to set an end date to oil and gas drilling, and we are even subsidizing to look for new areas. And we are going against the advice to the Secretary General in the UN and also the new report from the International Energy Agency. So if you compare us with Sweden and Denmark, for instance, we have only reduced our emissions with 4% since 1990, while our neighbors have done much better. And for instance, where Denmark, that also have a quite big activity in the North Sea, has set an end date to oil and gas exploration in 2050. So it is a dual thing.
Svien, I wanted to ask you, moving on to some of the extreme events, weather events in Europe, including the floods or the wildfires, and not to mention the hurricane that is happening right now in the United States. How concerned are you about dangerous climate change, and I guess what needs to be done?
Well, I think everybody understands that the situation is extremely dangerous for future generations. There is no doubt about that anymore. And I think there is just one recipe that works, and that is to take the source to the problem, and that is fast reduction of emissions, and that means cutting down on fossil energy production. Flying less and eating less meat is fine, but it's not sufficient at all. Collective action is needed. We have to increase CO2 taxes, we have to withdraw subsidies on fossil energy, and we have to move to renewables much faster than what we see today. We have to have a fast speed up of renewable energy production, 3 times what we have now in 10 years.
Just focusing on the getting out of the fossil fuels for a minute. I remember noting that back in 2015, the Norwegian Sovereign Nation Fund, which is one of the biggest of its types in the world, announced that it was going to divest out of coal and taking that leadership position. Could you just walk us through how things panned out over the next 6 years and how Europe's going in terms of getting out of coal?
This we don't have any coal, but we have oil and gas, and we here we see very good progress. And actually, there is an election coming up in Norway now, only in 2 weeks' time, and following the report from the IPCC and other things, the people that want to have a more progressive climate policy is getting momentum. Now we have a conservative government. Most likely now we will have a center-left government in 2 weeks. And the Labour Party that still don't want to stop oil and gas exploration, they have promised now, when you talk about the sovereign fund, that it should be committed to zero emissions. The fund is in 12,000 companies, and they are not requiring that they will have zero emissions tomorrow, but they have to give a credible plan to how they are going to reach zero. Much stronger than what you mentioned when we were withdrawing from coal in our sovereign fund investments. This is going in the right direction and will drive the development positively and be an example for other funds around the world.
We've got the big conference at Glasgow coming up in November, the COP26, the Conference of the Parties. So what do you think are going to be the big issues or the big decision points at that conference?
Well, again, first of all, it is super important because maybe it's the last chance we have to reach global climate goals. I don't think we will make the 1.5, but we can still make the 2 centigrade goal. And what is needed is an agreed plan to phase out fossil energy production and increase renewable energy production much faster than what is happening today. Ambitions need to be raised. We need to reduce emissions by 10% a year until 2030. If the conference is not in a way agreeing on these goals, it will not play the role it should play. I'm afraid it will not manage to get an agreement on this. On the other hand, now we see around the world that people are waking up. So there is hope. Young people are pushing, for instance, what I mentioned to the students when I'm out there in the schools. I'm telling them, and they are not aware, that they have been crucial and extremely important. Because when key people that would like to make a transition or a shift, like the Secretary General in the UN or world leaders that are progressive, the best argument they have and what they say is what the young people have been doing through their action around the world. Greta Thunberg and her movement. So they are actually much more important than they are aware of. And I also tell them that if anybody of you have participated in this Friday for Future, I give you a great thank you.
That's so nice. That's so nice. And it is their future, isn't it? So it's really important. Svien, I know that you keep a close eye on the rest of the world. How do you actually see Australia in your eyes in regards to climate change action? And how do you think they'll be viewed at the COP26 meeting in Glasgow?
Not very good. I think I've been to most of these conferences, and the NGOs, for instance, they are each day in a way announcing the fossil of the day, and I think Australia has got it before, and it will get it again. I think you, even if you are definitively a victim of climate change, your forest fires, your heat waves, your downgrading of Great Barrier Reef, it looks like you have failed to act to protect your people from, I think, maybe the greed of the fossil fuel industry, the fossil lobby, the coal lobby is probably too strong. Even if you have excellent conditions for renewable energy production, it looks like the shift is coming slower to Australia than the rest of the world. So you might then lag behind, lose a lot of green business opportunities, and suffer more from the impacts of climate change, unfortunately. So you must leave fossil energy behind. That's your solution. That will be successful to your people and to the world.
Svien, yeah, very powerful words there. This segment always goes so quickly. I say that every single week. Just one last question before we have to wrap things up. But you once said if we had listened to scientists 30 years ago, we wouldn't have a big problem like we have now. And I also understand that you grew up on a farm with a horse and buggy, where you got your love of nature. What do you think the world will be like in another 30 years from now?
That's true, actually. And the answer to your question, I don't know how the world will look like in 30 years. Again, back to my students. I tell them that when I was at your age, and if somebody told me that the world would look like it looks today, at that time, they would say science fiction, this is absolutely impossible, it will not happen. So the change has been extremely fast. And it goes faster and faster. So I don't know how it will be in 30 years. But what I know is that if we don't act extremely fast, we will have a climate and nature crisis that will overshadow earlier human crises. And I'm very worried of the future for my students and my grandchildren. But as I said earlier, we still have hope and possibility, but we have to act extremely fast.
Svien, I really want to thank you so much for coming on to Ticker Climate. It's so wonderful to get your insight on this, and obviously it's definitely your area of expertise and you're someone that we obviously look up to. Scott, I know that you've loved this as well.
Totally, and thank you again.
Yeah, and that's all we have time for today on Ticker Climate. Thank you so much to you both for your time. Until next time.